morning, class. Unfortunately, we will not have any guest lecturers today. It's just going to be me. We're going to cover one of the most famous mechs next. So, this is the Banshee. The Banshee was actually first introduced in 2445, and the BNC 1E Banshee is, again, a primitive mech. So you'll see primitive fusion engine, primitive gyro, prototype particle projector cannon. This particular mech is slightly lighter than the Emperor or the Mackie that we've covered before at only 95 tons. Um, but where the Mackie and the Emperor eventually became either juggernauts or snipers, the Banshee in this primitive version started off as a sniper and then eventually became a dedicated close combat mech. So while we start off with a 3-5 movement profile with that primitive fusion engine, a single small laser is relatively good for anti-infantry maneuvers. Also has a pair of medium lasers, which are fairly decent against mechs, and an AC5, which is not terrible, but it is better for long range shots than anything else. And the prototype PPC, also good for long range shots. The advantage that the Banshee has over some of the previous mechs is that the autocannon and the PPC are located inside the right and left torsos. The medium laser is in the center torso, and the small laser is in the head. This is the first instance we have of a weapon being mounted in the head. While that idea does disappear, it doesn't disappear completely. We will see it pop up again from time to time. It has an armor factor of 240, thanks to the give or take 15 tons of armor, and 16 double heat sinks. The Banshee wants to sit in a spot and just take shots with its PPC and its AC5. Yeah, 16 double heat sinks. The Banshee doesn't want to go moving around a whole lot. It wants to sit in one spot and really only wants to move if it has to reposition. Now, as typically happens with these early prototype mechs, we very quickly leave that behind and we move on to the BNC 3E. The primitive and prototype equipment has gone away, and because of that, the movement profile jumps from a 3-5 to a 4-6, which is actually fairly fast for an assault mech. At 95 tons, a movement profile of 4-6 is pretty speedy, all things considered. The 3E is undeniably fast. However, this comes at a cost. The General Motors 380 fusion engine does not leave a lot of room for weaponry, which is why we ultimately lose the two medium lasers. But we do retain the small laser, the PPC, which is no longer a prototype, but a full particle projection cannon, and we do retain the AC5. Now, the Banshee does suffer a little bit. This particular model can be beaten by a rifleman, which we will get to that mech later. But this mech is not bad. It did have poor combat performance, which forced the Terran Hegemony to abandon active production in 2485. As we continue on through the years, even during the succession wars, the poor reputation did follow the Banshee around, resulting in some commanders seeing it as a liability. So the The BNC 3E sees more use in the periphery rather than the actual inner sphere, where typically you will have better options if you're looking to send assault mechs in, or if you need an assault mech. The Succession War did keep the Banshee around and did keep it going for a long time, mostly due to the simple fact that nobody really had better options. Now, after a while, Defiance Industries eventually got around to this thing and were able to produce a variant that does improve on the 3E. But we'll get to that specific model when we get to it. Prior to that, though, we do have the 3EA. This is a dedicated sniper version. Same armor profile, same internals, same heatsink count at 16. The big change on this one is that we're still keeping the small laser in the head, but we are also adding a pair of rear-facing small lasers in the left and right torso. You will also see this when we eventually get to the Atlas. Something needed to be pointed backwards just in case somebody was able to get in behind you. That's going to be abandoned pretty quickly, as it is kind of a waste to have a pair of weapons pointed at your back when, if you're already doing that, you're probably going to just turn the mech around. We do see a medium laser come into the picture here in the center torso. We still see the AC-5. The PPC has been dropped in favor of a large laser in the right torso. 16 double heat sinks. It's actually not bad. 16 double heat sinks is a little bit wasted on this mech, as 15 heat alpha striking with all of the weapons, but you've got to be within 3 hexes in order to do that. Not great, but it does mean that personally, I'm going to prefer this particular model over a lot of other variants, because this thing can run around, fire as many of its weapons as possible, and not overheat at all. So, this, to me, is a good version of the Banshee. So, moving on from the 3E, we get into the 3M. This particular model is actually an older one in terms of the record sheets. You can tell by the old art. However, this particular model was an attempt by the Free Worlds League and House Merrick to quote unquote fix the shortcomings of the Banshee. They produced it in 2579. So there's a couple of things that happen here. Nothing really changes. Same movement profile. Top speed of around 60 kilometers an hour. Armor factor 240. 16 single heat sinks. However, they did replace the AC-5 with a second PPC. They also upped the medium laser count to 2 while keeping the single small laser in the head. There's a problem here. And that problem is that firing both of the PPCs is going to cause the mech to overheat, and overheat relatively quickly. You will very quickly find yourself having the mech slow down, as well as eventually running the risk of having to shut down in order to save itself from a full-on meltdown. This thing needs more heat sinks, and that's kind of part of the problem that this mech is going to have. There's going to have to be a lot of trade-offs to make this mech work, and those trade-offs are not necessarily going to be worth it. Now, there's another version around the same time based off of this particular model, and that is the BNC 3MC. This one is a Magistracy of Canopus model that appears around 3039. Now, this one also has some issues. The Magistracy decided to strip out 5 heat sinks as well as the AC5 to make room for an AC10. The AC10 is not bad. However, it ain't great. It has a shorter range when compared to the AC5 in exchange for more damage, and stripping out those 5 heat sinks means that compared to our 3M here, we are still going to be facing heat issues fairly frequently. It's not. This is not the route to take. These models are the ones that you will typically see throughout Succession War history, all the way up through the clan invasion. It's not until we get to the Blakist era where we get the 3MR. This one is just a flat upgrade. This is a field refit, replaces the 16 single heat sinks with double heat sinks. That 32 cooling capacity does wonders. However, they then proceeded to shove a pair of ER medium lasers and ER PPCs into the thing. This isn't quite as bad as it seems at first, because shooting a pair of ER PPCs, it's only going to generate 30 heat. The mech can move and fire at long range while slowly closing in. And then once it does close in, you can either risk overheating it or you can switch over to the medium lasers. And if you do get in close enough to start engaging in melee combat, that small laser will come in handy. That is honestly the best practice with this thing. Either keep the Banshee at long range, or if you have one of the units like the 3MR, try to get it in close as quick as you can and just start beating other mech pilots into submission. Now, 2915, House Merrick had to do a retrofit. The Succession Wars were not kind to any of the great houses. So this particular model is somewhat of a side grade. A lack of PPCs on the market kind of forces you to do whatever you can in order to actually keep yourself in the fight. So the PPCs had to be dropped. The AC5 got dropped, and in its place, they loaded up an AC20. This is good. However, there's a slight problem with this. The AC20 does not have the range that an AC10 or an AC5 has. So this mech suddenly became a very close quarters mech. And the only weapons it has are the AC20 and the small laser. That's it. It has nothing else. They also had to downgrade the heatsink count from 16 to 12 in order to actually stay within its weight limit. This one, personally, I would take this mech. However, there is a specific lance in the regiment that it would fit into. As we start kind of covering some of the mechs involved in that particular lance, this will make a lot more sense. But this would be a mech that I would run. This thing, despite its lack of fighting power, and this one's hard to overheat. There's not a whole lot generating heat on it. Even if you run, it's still not going to hit the heatsink cap, let alone begin to overheat. It's not a terrible mech, but it's also not really great. Now, in 3026, we get Defiance Industries BNC3S. This is the version where Defiance Industries decided they were going to make a product that would fix the problems that the Banshee has. One of the first things they did is they took out the General Motors 380 and put in a Pit Band 285. That freed up some weight, but it did reduce the speed. So now we are back to a Banshee with the typical assault movement profile of 3.5. The trade-off for that is that this freed up quite a bit of room inside the mech. We see a jump from 16 heat sinks to 21, as well as going from the small laser in the head, which is still present, and a PPC in the right torso and an autocannon or an AC-10 in the left torso. But you'll also notice that we have another PPC in the left arm. You have an SRM-6 in the right torso alongside the PPC, as well as 4 medium lasers in the right torso. This thing is what you typically will think of when you think of an assault mech. The PPCs by themselves are going to push very heavy into the heat cap, especially if the mech is moving. But considering the armor profile, unless you are up against something with a Gauss rifle or something that's got some serious speed behind it and an AC-20, or you're doing perhaps city fighting and you know somebody's bringing an urban mech, don't worry, we will get to the trash can. Keeping this thing at range, keeping it relatively mobile and firing the PPCs and staying heat neutral is not a bad strategy. Something starts to get in a little bit too close, you can risk adding the AC-10 into the mix. If something gets in significantly close, definitely I would recommend dropping the PPCs from your weapon mix and just unloading with the 4 medium lasers, the SRM-6, and the AC-10. Doing it that way, you should stay relatively heat neutral. You shouldn't have to really worry about the thing overheating, which is always good. Next, we're going to cover the 5S. Now, the 5S here is partly a refit with Star League era tech. This one's got some fun toys on it. So they were able to replace the GM 380 with an XL engine, and then they also reduced the heatsink count to 14, but replaced those remaining 14 with double heat sinks, giving us 28 cooling capacity, as well as the mech being lighter. We're able to return to that 4-6 movement profile. The head-mounted small laser is still there. We have another small laser in the center torso again. You actually have 2 ERPPCs in the right torso this time. We have returned to the rear-facing lasers with a pair of mediums in the right and left torsos pointed to the back, just in case anything manages to get in behind you. We have 2 medium lasers mounted up in the left arm, and then an SRM-6 in the right arm. And to replace the autocannon that has been standard for the Banshee up until this point, we now have a Gauss rifle. This mech is undeniably a sniper through and through. The Gauss rifle is able to reach out almost as far as the 2 ERPPCs. The one trade-off is that the ERPPCs are pumping out enough heat that they will cause the mech to overheat, even if it's standing still. So you will want to cycle between the PPCs and the Gauss rifle at long range. And as you slowly close in, you'll want to start switching out for the small lasers and the SRM-6. This is not a bad mech. This is another mech that I would bring in one of my formations. There's a couple lances that I can think of that I would that I would include this or swap out one of the mechs that's already in the regiment for this particular model. Now, after this one, we have the 6S. The 6S came into production at the same time as the FedCom Civil War was kicking off. This one's got a similar setup to the 5S. Instead of an XL engine, we just have a light fusion. The heat sinks are reduced again to only 10, but they are double heat sinks. This is slightly less of an issue, but that's only because this particular model dumps all that extra weight into a single weapon system. We did also lose some armor. We're now down to an armor factor of 232. Now, the big thing here is the heavy Gauss rifle. The heavy Gauss rifle is one of those situations that forces the Banshee to kind of put its eggs all in one basket. It's not a great weapon. It's good. I will not besmirch the honor of the heavy Gauss rifle. It is a good gun for a mech. It's just I don't like the weight that it has. It's 18 tons of room that you have to make up for. You'll also notice that the Gauss rifle is almost completely filling up the left torso as well as the center torso. It is a large gun, and the ammo has to be spread all over the mech. It's in the right torso, it's in both of the legs, all to keep this one particular gun firing. Now, alongside that heavy Gauss rifle, there is an LBX-10. LBXs are always good. They did outfit it with both slug and cluster ammunition, so you can punch through enemy armor, and once you have punched through, you could then switch over to the cluster munitions and start tearing through internals. But this particular model, even though it does have an endosteel chassis and it does have a case system in the torsos, this one isn't it for me. Now, after the 6S, we also have the 7S, where I'm not a fan of the 6S. I am more of a fan of the 7S. So the 7S goes through a similar process here where we have switched out for a light fusion engine, not an XL, only a light. And we have 14 double heat sinks for a cooling capacity of 28. We retain the 4-6 movement profile. We actually see an increase in the armor to 244, and we include a Gauss rifle in that left torso alongside an ERPPC in the left arm, a pair of ER medium lasers in the right, and an additional pair of ER medium lasers in the right and left torso, one on each side, as well as an SRM-6 in the right torso. This one also came around during the FedCom Civil War. This one I like better. The ERPPC and the Gauss rifle are able to reach out and hit something without driving the mech over its cooling capacity. And even if you get in close, you will still be able to keep this thing relatively cool. You will have to cycle off a medium laser or two, but that's all right. We can make it work. Still have the case system, which is important for preventing your Gauss rifle capacitors or the SRM-6 missiles from blowing up, especially if the torsos get hit. You do not want the components in your left and right torso going off and ripping your fusion engine apart. That's how you die, Riza. Your fusion engine goes into meltdown. All right, now back to the Blakist era. The 8S is a little bit interesting. This is a Word of Blake model that they produced on Hesperus 2 in 3070. Once again, we replace the heat sinks with double heat sinks and then also reduce the number down to 13. So 13 double heat sinks for a cooling capacity of 20, but then we throw triple strength myomer onto the mech. They did build it with an XL engine and an XL gyro in order to continue to lessen the weight, which let them add a ton of weaponry to it, as well as increase the armor factor to 288. This particular model can really take some punishment before it will go down. The K system is still there in the left torso. The right torso is now taken up by that XL engine, an ER large laser, a couple of medium lasers, an ER medium laser, and an ER small laser, as well as the Guardian ECM suite, which is always appreciated. They put a snub nose PPC into the right arm alongside another ER medium laser. They kept the LB-10X autocannon with its slug and cluster munitions. Then they also included a hatchet in the left arm, as well as stuffed a C3 system into the left arm as well. Now, I'm a fan of the C3 system because it does let you share telemetry data, and considering the fact that as an assault mech, if you can get this thing to overheat, it will be able to move with a profile of 480. However, I would have dropped the small laser in the head and moved the C3 system into the head rather than stick it in the left arm. That's just me. The Blakists were weird, man. I don't really know what to tell you other than that. This is a fairly solid mech. Does not have the range that we've seen on other models. It does have decent range to it with all of the extended range lasers, but this one is meant to get in close, basically just act as a spotter for your dedicated missile boats. After the 8S, we have the 9S. This was an upgrade of the 8S produced by Defiance Industries. So here we see that once again, while we have swapped out the heat sinks for doubles, and we've gone back to 14. Now, having taken place or having been built during the Blakist era, there are once again some weird decisions that were made. We are still looking at armor factor of 288, but the movement profile has dropped to 3.5, mostly due to the fact that instead of an XL engine, we have a light engine again. One of the interesting things they did is that they put a light and a heavy PPC into the left arm. They put a pair of ER medium lasers in the right arm. They put a medium laser and a Gauss rifle in the left torso, and SRM-6 in the right torso alongside a targeting computer, which is always good. Targeting computers will improve the accuracy of your weapons. I typically don't take targeting computers, but that's just me. Targeting computers will help your non-missile systems acquire targets and hit better. But then we also see something kind of interesting. we finally see the death of the head-mounted small laser because they replaced it with an ER medium laser. This mech is a little all over the place. It just is. The heavy PPC is an interesting choice. It was an attempt to replicate the capability of a clan ER PPC. It's got the same damage, it's got the same heat output, it just does not have the range. And like a lot of inner sphere tech, it is bigger and heavier than its clan equivalent. The light PPC, in my opinion, is a side grade at best for the ER medium laser. Depending on exactly what role a mech is going to play in a lance, the light PPC may be worth it. If it's a formation that's meant to be long range, I would say take the light PPC. Otherwise, the medium laser is going to do you just fine. There's nothing that you're going to get out of a light PPC that an ER medium laser won't do. Now, there is a sequel to the 9S, and that is the 9S2. This one has a lot of the same equipment. Armor is the same, engine is the same, heatsink are the same. Everything's essentially the same. It's just that the ER medium laser in the head is still there. The Gauss rifle in the left torso is still there. The heavy and light PPCs in the left arm are still there. We have just swapped out all of the other weapons to include a second light PPC in the right arm. We have kept the targeting computer, but we have included a C3 boosted slave system. Now, the boosted system, you will see quite a bit as time progresses. The boosted systems are incompatible with the unboosted systems, but with the exception of the Angel ECM suite, the C3 boosted system cannot be tampered with. Only the Angel ECM suite is powerful enough to interfere with the signal of the boosted C3 network. This particular model is most predominant in the Republic of the Sphere era. It does have some interesting choices. This particular one, if I was going to take a 9S, I would prefer the 9S2, as this one has a clear role to play. This is meant to be a long-range hitter. This is one of those situations where I would suggest a light PPC will work over an ER medium laser. The longer range of the light PPC will match the heavy PPC. The four primary weapons here are not going to let the Banshee 9S2 overheat. It's going to be close, but you will actually be able to stay relatively heat neutral with this particular model. This is a good version of the Banshee. We have finally had it overcome all of its flaws. Now, the last one we have is a Dark Age refit. This one, you will notice a lot of C's next to a lot of things. So, we have a Clan XL engine, which is even better than an Inner Sphere XL, because it is even lighter than the Inner Sphere version. Still rocking the 14 double heat sinks for a cooling capacity of 28. We are back to the 460 movement profile. We're still sitting at 288 armor factor. Now, scattered across the head, the center torso, and then 4 of them in the right torso, we have Clan ER small and medium lasers. So the head laser is back. Small laser in the head, small laser in the center torso, and then the 4 medium lasers in the right torso. All of them extended range, all of them clanner, which means that yes, even though I am an inner sphere merc, these are better lasers. Endosteel chassis again, case system in the left torso. Pair of ERPPCs are back, one in the right torso alongside an SRM-6 launcher, and the second ERPPC in the left arm with a Gauss rifle in the left torso to round out our weapon loadout. This one, I am not as much of a fan of. 2 ERPPCs are going to cause the mech to begin overheating. And while this particular one doesn't have the issues that some of the older ones have, where you very quickly build up excess heat, I will always say heat neutral is better than overheating. Now you can cycle through the 2 PPCs and drop the Gauss rifle into it in exchange for one of the PPCs while you're firing at long range. That's a perfectly acceptable way of running this particular mech. And then as you slowly move in, you can start incorporating the 4 ER medium lasers into that cycling. But you will want to keep an eye on your heat buildup so that you don't accidentally shut this thing down right as you reach the enemy. You do not want this thing shutting down on you right as you reach them, because that is how you get your cockpit smashed in. There are a couple of things here. So the original BNC 1E with its primitive loadout does have the following design quirks. It does have bad reputation. Understandable. It does have distracting. It is very large, and the somewhat humanoid face that the mech has carried throughout its design is definitely going to distract enemies, as well as its size. Luckily, the Banshee is easy to maintain, which is one of the reasons why it has stuck around for as long as it has. Being easy to maintain and being an assault mech has kept it in the inner sphere zeitgeist for a very long time. Now, prior to the clan invasion, for all other models of the Banshee, you will see bad reputation continue. During the clan invasion and after, that drops off, and you will have rugged alongside it throughout all of its iterations. The Banshee gets maligned quite a bit, understandably so, because it is an old chassis that was in desperate need of some significant reworking. However, as we have seen, over the course of the Banshee's long and storied history, it has gone from one of the most maligned mechs in the inner sphere to a go-to assault mech. There is no such thing as a bad mech. There are only mechs that you need to learn how to use better. Not every mech is going to be able to be an Atlas or a King Crab or a Marauder. You have to know how to use your equipment, and you have to know what you're doing. With that, I don't like doing the typical YouTube, Twitch shenanigans, but if you feel like it, give it a like, subscribe, leave a comment. Let me know what mech you're most excited for me to cover next. We will slowly be working our way through the list. We will also be doing some of the other vehicles as well as infantry. Infantry are just as important as the mechs. So, the links are on the page for you to be able to throw some money my way for Patreon. I'll be able to do this full time and put out videos more often. You'll also get access to the Discord and some other benefits. But that all being said, I will see you guys next time. Class dismissed.